Raptor, Call of the Shadows is one of those games that I can't help but look at through the rosy tint of nostalgia. I think of late summer afternoons taking turns with one of my best friends, chewing through waves of enemy aircraft and enjoying the satisfying screen-clearing blast of a megabomb, dreaming of one day actually beating the game, unaware that it would be 2 decades before that day would finally come. Eventually, my family got a new computer that wasn't able to run the game with sound, and I just couldn't stand to play the game like that. It wouldn't be until I got hip to DOSBox as an adult that I would finally reach the end of this game. Silly as it sounds, beating Raptor Call of the Shadows was the conclusion of a lifelong quest, the achievement of which actually does feel like a validation of my adulthood, providing closure to one of the lingering threads from my childhood. So no, there is no way I'm going to pretend that this review is even remotely objective. With that out of the way, I still have things to talk about, so let's dive in. True to shareware form, the game is divided into episodes, called sectors this time. The first of which is free, and the remaining sectors available once you've bought the full version of the game, and each sector is more difficult than the one that precedes it. What you're likely to notice when you start your first level is that the game is hard as hell. Even the easiest difficulty still has the potential to kill you if you're new to games, and if you play your first time on the hardest difficulty, it will kick your ass over and over again until you get it right. As you begin to acquire new weapons and build up an arsenal, the odds will begin to shift in your favor, but especially on the hardest mode, you can never get too comfortable. No matter how well you're doing, this game can still take you down several pegs in an instant if you make a mistake. And much of the time, the only way to survive certain areas is to already know what's ahead of you and to have the right tool at the ready to deal with the onslaught. But be careful. Even if you don't die, if you become too badly damaged, you will lose all of your special weapons. If it starts to turn sour, it's wise to abort the mission and reload your save. While memorization and repetition is par for the course in this genre, Raptor does things a little differently from its contemporaries when it comes to how weapons are acquired. Weapons, health, bombs, and shields can be picked up in each mission, but outside of the missions, you can purchase these items at a shop, with the more powerful stuff not even being available as pickups anywhere in the game. Killing enemies and destroying scenery will reward you with money, and you can even resell items recovered during missions back at the shop. This economy adds an interesting layer to managing your arsenal and provides an incentive to go back and replay easier sectors to earn money for the big guns. On harder difficulties, grinding like this becomes absolutely necessary. Although this can be extremely tedious, it is interesting to see a game of this era allow you to tackle its harder modes through insane perseverance, if sheer skill alone isn't enough. While it does make the game more fair, on the other hand, it results in a lot of repetition, which makes much of the challenge feel unnatural and contrived. This method of extending playtime would be heavily criticized in a modern game, but back in the days where games were generally less sophisticated, it was pretty common to force players to backtrack and grind, and also pretty widely accepted. It's less of an issue on medium difficulties, but when you crank it up, you really notice that beating the game has less to do with how good you are, and more to do with how much of your life you're willing to sink into it. The in-game economy is ultimately annoying and rewarding in equal measure, and love it or hate it, it's one of the things that makes the game stand out. The other thing is the fantastic 2D graphics, which have aged very well. The screen is packed with detail, water gives the appearance of varying levels of depth, buildings and vehicles on the ground crumble and break, and enemy ships explode in big, satisfying fireballs. You get the sense that this game was handcrafted and cared for, and it's easy to admire the scenery, or get caught up in the zen of screen-filling animated destruction. All of this is aided by an excellent Midi soundtrack that deftly mixes dark, brooding themes with lighter, Top Gun-style cheesiness. Raptor Call of the Shadows is a scrolling shooter for the more patient player. Unlike almost every game of its type, one player's experience is going to be a bit different from another thanks in large part to the in-game economy and the freedom it grants you in assembling an arsenal. Even though it's tough, it gives you the tools you need to surmount it, even if it makes you grind a little too much to get there at times. It hails from a time when beating a game was a real accomplishment, and it exists not just to challenge you, but for you to enjoy its wide arsenal of weapons. It's made with love and intended to be fun, and it most certainly is. I've loved this game for my entire life, and I regret nothing.